This video is part of a series on the 33 Strategies of War by Robert Greene. War is the art of bringing about resolutions to conflicts by violent means. However, the strategies deployed in war can help you resolve almost any conflict you will encounter in life. This series is not intended to glorify war or promote violence. Rather, the strategies and examples given will encompass all manner of human conflicts and will assist you in planning how best to achieve your goals and overcome obstacles so that perhaps we may all live peacefully. Guerrilla War of the Mind. Strategy 2. What most often weighs you down and brings you misery is the past, in the form of unnecessary attachments, repetitions of tired formulas, and the memory of old victories and defeats. Robert Greene. Part 1. Don't fight the last war. For centuries, the greatest advantage in warfare was a strong cavalry. One of the most important elements of warfare even today is still mobility. Prior to the industrial age, this meant a people's ability to train and ride horses. Although several other beasts of burden were used throughout history in warfare, no animal is a greater platform for a soldier than a horse. For centuries, the nomadic horse tribes of the Eurasian steppe were a constant threat to established kingdoms that did not keep trained cavalry in their standing militaries. This tradition continued well into the 20th century, when the tried and true tactic of mounted cavalry charges would finally meet their match against the might of reliable and sustained rifle fire. There were many ill-fated cavalry charges in the First World War, such as this one depicted in the 2011 film War
Out,
Wars.
and we could slide in behind the German lines and come at them from the south at Guerrilla.
Excellent. Numbers?
About 600 infantry.
Twice our size.
Regiments of horse and men, the advantage is ours.
In this film, we see that the premise of a cavalry charge, aided by the speed of horses, can still catch unaware dismounted units off guard. However, once the charge runs into entrenched troops with machine gun support, there is no contest. The advantage that mounted troops enjoyed for thousands of years had finally come to an end. In the 1997 film Private Parts, loosely based on the real-life career of radio shock jock Howard Stern, we see that Stern, unlike his competition, has no nostalgic attachment to the plain, mundane radio talk programs of the past.
Just came from the FCC. Did you say testicles on the air?
Wait a second. Through the FCC,
we just lost Muffler Man.
Hold on, we have a real problem here,
I'm just
Howard.
trying to get ratings.
I am just trying to run a radio.
While other radio programs were still playing it safe, Stern instead was constantly trying to go over the line and cause a stir in his audience.
Now you're getting a look at a live broadcast of the Howard Stern Show.
And you're licking whipped cream off a kielbasa, and you're putting it in your mouth, and you're jamming the kielbasa all the way down your throat. Oh my God, look at that. The entire kielbasa is going down. She has swallowed.
Giving them something they never expected to hear. He eventually climbs to the charts and becomes the top radio personality in the country.
Stern fan listens for, are you ready for this? An hour and 20 minutes.
How can that be?
Answer most commonly given, I want to see what he'll say next.
The reason for his success has more to do with his competitors. They had fallen behind the times. They had failed to live up to the moment they were living in. They were still romanticizing the days of old radio, like the military commanders on their horses.
People who hate Stern.
Good point. The average Stern hater listens for 2.5 hours a day.
Look, but if they hate him, why do they listen?
Most common answer, I want to see what he'll say next.
Stern, who grew up knowing what radio of the past was like, but had the notion that it could be so much more. He didn't cling to the past, he looked to the present and dragged radio into the future along with him. Today, you can probably find a radio personality like him in every major market and every corner of the internet. People saying outlandish things to gain attention. Part 2. The Present War. You must constantly wage war against the past and force yourself to react to the present moment. Be ruthless on yourself. Do not repeat the same tired methods. Robert Greene. In the fictionalized films of the Rocky franchise, the titular character Rocky Balboa, played by Sylvester Stallone, faces off against a worthy and sometimes superior opponent in each film.
Dead meat.
Starting in the second installment of the franchise, Rocky learns from his coach Mickey that he cannot use the same methods he used previously to fight Apollo Creed.
You gotta change everything. You gotta learn to be a right-handed fighter. Now this'll confuse Apollo, and it'll protect that bad eye.
In order to protect his now weaker left eye, he has to learn to fight right-handed. This will not only protect his vulnerable side, but also throw off his opponent, who is expecting him to fight left-handed as he had before.
Rocky's holding that right hand, but he's fighting right-handed. I don't believe it. The southpaw still is fighting right-handed.
Rocky's fictionalized career of growth and change mirrors that of Japan's greatest swordsman, Miyamoto Musashi, author of the Book of the Five Rings. Musashi fought many duels and won them all. In every duel, he never used the same tactic. He often changed weapons and fighting styles. Early in his career, he defeated and killed 2 members of the Ashoka family. In both duels, he had shown up late to anger his opponent. Then, when he faced a 3rd member of the family, he decided to show up very early and hide in the trees. When his opponent showed up with a small party to set an ambush for him, counting on him being late, it was Musashi who had the upper hand. Taking them by surprise and unprepared, he defeated them all. Years later, Musashi was set to fight a great samurai known for using a long sword. This time, he opted to arrive late, very late. He arrived by boat, and instead of carrying a sword, he brandished a sharpened oar that was much longer than his opponent's famous sword. Both his tardiness and the unusual choice of weapon threw his enemy off balance. He was handily defeated, and from then on Musashi would be known as a swordsman without peer. Musashi never stopped looking for an advantage. He was never rooted in one tactic or weapon or fighting style. He would sometimes arrive late, and then early, and then very late, and then very early. He would fight many men with a traditional katana, and then single opponents with 2 weapons, or just an oar. His enemies never knew what to expect from him, and they would always be left guessing. In the 2011 film Moneyball, based on a non-fiction book of the same name by Michael Lewis, Brad Pitt plays Billy Beane, a former baseball player turned manager of the underfunded and struggling Major League Baseball team, the Oakland A's.
Trying to solve is that there are rich teams and there are poor teams. Then there's 50 feet of crap, and then there's us. It's an unfair game.
Unhappy with his team's performance and the uneven way the league handles financing and recruiting, Billy Beane strikes out in a new direction. He begins to encourage outside-the-box thinking. He hires statisticians that are not hung up on the old statistics.
People are overlooked for a variety of biased reasons and perceived flaws. Age, appearance, personality. Bill James and mathematics cut straight through that.
This new thinking brings resistance from the older scouts, coaches, and players who would rather continue with their old tactics.
We want you to play first base for the Oakland A's.
Okay, whoa. But the thing is,
You don't know how to play first base. Scott?
That's right.
It's not that hard, Scott. Tell him, Wash.
It's incredibly hard.
Hey, anything worth doing is, and we're gonna teach you.
But using the new tactics, the team goes on a record-breaking 20-game winning streak that year. and becomes a contender for the AL West title, but eventually loses out. The new recruiting tactics are eventually adopted by other major teams and go on to become industry standard. Part 3. Reverse course. Sometimes you must force yourself to strike out in new directions, even if it involves risks. What you may lose in the comfort and security you will gain in surprise and make it harder for your enemy to tell what you will do. Wage guerrilla war on your mind, allowing no static lines of defense, no exposed citadels. Make everything fluid and mobile. Robert Greene. In the 2002 film We Were Soldiers, based on the book We Were Soldiers Once and Young, about the historic Battle of the Ladrang Valley, written by Lieutenant General Hal Moore and Joseph Galloway, both of whom were present at the battle. In the film, Hal Moore is in charge of the 7th Cavalry Regiment, the Army's first air assault unit.
Welcome to the new cavalry. We will ride into battle, and this will be our horse.
The premise was to utilize the relatively new helicopter technology to create a more mobile fighting force, one that can operate in remote areas and then redeploy quickly as needed. The Ladrang Valley was one of the first major engagements of the Vietnam War. Some of the tactics being deployed were new and required some refinement while in the field. The use of the new technology, the speed at which the soldiers were able to deploy and resupply themselves, set the Vietnamese army back. They were used to fighting the colonial forces of the French that operated on foot patrols without close air support or the ability to resupply.
Wounded on board! All right, get the animal on and get the wounded on! Come on, bring them on! Get them on, boys!
Both sides would learn a lot from this engagement. In the final scenes of the film, we get a glimpse of what the Vietnamese tactics would be going forward in the war. At the outset of the engagement, they had hoped to draw out their enemy into the valley where they were exposed and they could defeat them.
What do you estimate the enemy strength?
We appraise our numbers as manageable, Colonel.
Simple orders, Hal. Find the enemy and kill him.
Their American enemies, however, fought extremely hard for the valley, and the battle ended in a tactical victory for the Americans. At the end of the battle, the Americans left, and so did the Vietnamese forces. There was no strategic value to the valley for either side. From then on, this would be the tactic of the Vietnamese: to draw out the Americans and fight them in places of their choosing, in quick engagements, then retreat. Neither side would hold ground. This was not necessary. The Vietnamese would only need to draw out the conflict until it was no longer sustainable to continue the war. What Ladrang showed the Vietnamese was that Americans were a mobile force that would travel to its fights and then return to their bases. That meant that they can be drawn into engagements where the enemy was determined to fight. And if the Vietnamese did not want to fight in a particular place, they would retreat. Throughout the conflict, both forces would flow around the country like a river trying to find its own source. Part 4. The Keys to Warfare. Re-examine past beliefs and principles.
Did you think that a garrison on open ground would go undefended? Look at yourself! Who do you think you are?
Erase the memory of the last war. Keep moving forward.
But it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done.
Absorb the spirit of the times.
Gotta tell you something. I know a lot of you out there really love this music, but I just don't get it. Explain it to me. And maybe it's because I went to college and I never drove a truck and had sex with my daddy's sister, but I guess what I'm trying to say is I quit. I think I quit.
Reverse course.
David, you're 37. How about you and I be honest about what each of us want out of this? Now, I'm not paying you for the player you used to be. I'm paying you for the player you are right now. You're smart. You get what we're trying to do here. Make an example for the younger guys. Be a leader.
The reversal. Now that you know you should not be fighting the last war, you must realize that your enemy may be doing the same thing. Any strategy, if taken to one extreme or another, could be detrimental to obtaining your goals. As stated, always trying to reimagine the tactics that you are using in battle is a good thing. But you must imagine your enemy is doing the same. Never let yourself think that your enemy is not seeing the same mistakes you are. Hal Moore reimagined how an infantry unit can fight with the aided benefit of air transportation and close air support, but his enemy noticed this too and adjusted accordingly. You should always expect your enemy to surprise you, just as you expect to surprise your enemy. This is a production of Minimum Effort Media. There are new video essays on this channel on the first Friday of every month. You can argue with me about politics on social media at The Lazy Stoic across all platforms. You can listen to my podcasts, The War on Film, where I review war movies with my goofball friends. That's available on Spotify. Thank you.